I made a video a few months ago talking about this idea of classic masculinity, and the idea really seems to have caught on. Many of you love the aesthetic defined by men such as Cary Grant, Sean Connery, and Steve McQueen. Now I'm going to break down how you can achieve this style from clothing to physique to manscaping. The most important thing you need to know about the classically masculine man is that he takes pride in his appearance and he puts thought into his outfits. Today, if a man cares about his clothes, some might see him as feminine or even gay, but that was not the case in the era of classic masculinity. The most iconic male look in the mid-century was a two-piece suit, a dress shirt, and a tie. Being well-dressed as a man was all about wearing simple pieces in muted colors and being able to put these pieces together in a tasteful fashion. The classically masculine man does not dress to get attention, rather it is a sign of respect to others and a sign of self-respect. However, you don't need to wear a suit and tie every day to appear classically masculine. Take a look, for example, at Steve McQueen, often pictured wearing a t-shirt and a casual jacket. Still looks just as classic as James Bond in his two-piece suit. Today, to dress more classically masculine means to dress in more traditional, conservative clothes. You can pick colors that suit you, for example, a blue dress shirt to bring out the blue in your eyes, but never wear anything flamboyant or gaudy. Your footwear rotation should mostly consist of leather dress shoes or boots as opposed to sneakers. And the only accessory that you need as a classically masculine man is a simple wristwatch. So if you want to dress in this way, a small wardrobe is absolutely fine. Just take care of your clothes, get them tailored, treat them with love, and they will begin to feel like a second skin. In the mid-20th century, there was a much more rigid idea of how a man's haircut could look. The most common style you will see from this era is something very similar to what I'm wearing now, a classic side part, gentleman's cut as they call it. This is done with scissors as opposed to clippers. And then you style it using a comb and a pomade, and the pomade made of oil is what gives it this slick, shiny appearance. I love this hairstyle because it gives a very clean appearance, it's very easy to maintain, and it does not hide the face. Of course, this is not the only hairstyle available to a classically masculine man. Take a look at Steve McQueen or Paul Newman, who both wore a variety of shorter and slightly longer hairstyles. However, if you want to achieve this aesthetic, you absolutely cannot have long hair, a man bun, or anything scruffy or disheveled. A gentleman of this era would never have shaved his head or worn a buzz cut that was seen as thuggish. You also want to avoid current trends in barbering, such as fades and drastic undercuts. Before you go to the barber, ask yourself, would this have been an acceptable hairstyle for a man in the 1950s? It's always very helpful to bring a photo to show the barber exactly what you're after. In the era of classic masculinity, there was only really one option for a man's facial hair, and that was to go clean shaven. You would only see beards and moustaches on much more senior gentlemen, or those who belonged to the countercultural movements like the hippies or the beatniks. Now, this ritual of shaving every day is a very masculine ritual, a very masculine habit that I think many young men would benefit from. And personally, I'm very glad that I moved away from a more scruffy, stubble, 3-day beard style of facial hair to something more respectable and gentlemanly. However, I think you can absolutely do a modern take on the classically masculine aesthetic with a short, well-groomed beard or moustache. The classically masculine man is very hygienic. That means showering every day, cleaning your ears, trimming your nose hair. However, I have to admit that skincare for men was not really a thing back in this day. Many men washed their face simply with a bar of soap, which we know now is a very bad idea for your skin. So I think it's absolutely wise to introduce a more modern skincare regime today. And let's talk a little bit about manscaping. This was the era before manscaping. This was before men decided they wanted to look like living Ken dolls. Having a hairy chest was a sign of masculinity, and there would be absolutely no reason to shave it. I don't know about the more intimate details of men of this era, but I would say that a gentleman tends to his garden. Now let's take a few moments to talk about fragrance. The fragrance market in the mid-20th century was nowhere near the size of what it is today. Aside from the rich and famous, most men were limited to just a few choices found at their local drugstore. One of those choices would have been Old Spice. And I believe this is still a fantastic cologne, even for a young man. It's incredibly affordable, and it smells clean, fresh, bold, a little spicy, but most importantly, it just smells exactly how a man should. And it doesn't smell like an old man, as for example Aramis does. However, you might want to choose a modern cologne that has a classically masculine appeal. For that purpose, I really love Creed Aventus. For the most part, you want something that is clean, strong, and dependable. You want to avoid these modern fragrances that are unisex, not intended for one gender or the other. You want something that is very distinctly male. However, I have to note one historical exception, which would be Sean Connery. His signature fragrance was Jicky by Guerlain, which is actually a woman's perfume that smells like cream and lavender. So I suppose if you're actually James Bond, you can break the rules here. In the era of the classically masculine man, being lean and athletic was much more important than being overly muscular and perfectly proportioned. Again, men were not trying to look like a Ken doll, and there was much less pressure on male body image. However, if you want to achieve any kind of good physique, some form of exercise is going to be necessary. This doesn't have to be weightlifting, although I would say that is a good one and that has made some significant improvements to my physique. But instead, you could play rugby, you could play tennis, you can play golf, you can go swimming. Enjoy sports, enjoy being outside, rather than spending hours a week in the gym. You also absolutely need to eat a healthy diet, and you need to avoid much of the modern processed junk food that simply wasn't so popular in the 50s and 60s. However, to achieve this type of body, you don't need to eat perfectly all the time. Yes, you can go out and have a few drinks. You can enjoy good restaurant food. And if your wife or your mother is a good cook, you can absolutely enjoy those home-cooked meals. The term quiet confidence best describes the personality of the classically masculine man. His body language, the way he walked, the way he sat down, was steady and reserved. The classically masculine man had a laconic reserve. He seldom said more than he needed to. And while this could be seen as aloof at times, the classically masculine man could also be incredibly light-hearted. He's never more than a moment away from a sharp, witty line. He smiles freely at people, and he takes the attitude that no matter what happens in this world, I'm going to be okay. Take a look, for example, at Roger Moore's portrayal of James Bond. He is constantly cracking jokes, but he still appears cool, calm, and collected. Now, when it comes to women, the approach of the classically masculine man is very different to a lot of the things that you'll see on YouTube today. I'm kind of sick of seeing all of these videos about approaching 100 girls in a week, going on 5 dates a week, because the classically masculine man does not spend his time chasing after women. Instead, he lives his life out there in the world in an attractive way and meets ladies along the way. In fact, he seems very much like he could take it or leave it, which puts him very much in control of their affection for him. Being classically masculine is not the only way to present yourself as a man. It's simply an aesthetic that appeals to me, and I know it's an aesthetic that appeals to many of you. I want to know in the comments, who is your classically masculine role model? Is it Sean Connery? Is it Cary Grant? Or is it perhaps Steve McQueen? And let me know, what is one thing you have changed about your appearance in order to emulate them? For example, my hairstyle is very much inspired by Sean Connery's portrayal of James Bond, which is ironic because in those movies he's actually wearing a toupee. In the vein of classic masculinity, I'm keeping today's outfit very simple with a dark navy two-piece suit by Suit Supply, a white French cuff dress shirt with a burgundy knit tie. Then you'll notice in my pocket I have a stitched edge pocket square by Fort Belvedere, and on my feet I've got a pair of black cap-toe Oxfords by Ace Marks. You'll find the link to everything I'm wearing in today's video in the description.